Let me hit you all with a little bit of information here really quick. Give you all a little bit of life learning. Information operations. Interesting. IO, information operations, involve actions taken to affect adversary information and information systems, while defending one's own information and information systems to achieve informational superiority in support of the organization's strategy. Information superiority is the capability to collect, process, and disseminate an uninterrupted flow of information while exploiting or denying an adversary's ability to do the same. IO applies across all phases of an operation, across the range of military operations, and at every level of war. Interesting. IO supports the strategic, operational, tactical levels of war, and the effective employment of IO is essential for meeting certain organizations' objectives. That is the definition coming straight out of the Irregular Warfare Manual, published by yours truly, United States Marine Special Operations Command. Now, that's information operations. Information operations is basically saying, how can we collect, steal, block certain pieces of information from making it to the mass public, and then how can we best process that information and then turn it into whatever we want it to be out into that mass population ourselves, ultimately supporting our own strategic objectives. The next definition I want to read you, though, is something called psychological operations, or otherwise known as PSYOPS. When properly employed, coordinated, and integrated, they can significantly enhance the combat power of X forces. PSYOP in contemporary and future unconventional warfare become more critical as ideological and resistance struggles increase. A temporary tactical advantage may create a long-term psychological disadvantage. All actions must be reviewed based upon their local, regional, or even international impact, which is called second and third order effects. Target audience includes the populations, otherwise known as the center of gravity, enemy forces, enemy sympathizers, the uncommitted, and resistance sympathizers. So PSYOPS is designed to significantly enhance a combat power of some type of force or organization. It becomes more critical the more polarized a group of people becomes. So the more radical or ideological somebody becomes, then the more important the psychological operations are. What this is saying is that ops is the ability to leverage the information that you're feeding to people in order to evoke some sort of action from them. So for example, riots in the street. For example, people hating a certain presidential candidate just because they don't like his personality, even though there's been no evidence whatsoever to back up any of the information operations, information claims that have been fed to the mass public. So you see how they work hand in hand here. How can we best control the flow of information that's being fed to the mass public, which, as said here, is the center of gravity? Now, for those of you who are not familiar with what the center of gravity is in terms of military tactics and strategy, the center of gravity is the critical key point in success within the battle space. Now, don't think of battle space as a physical battleground, because the modern asymmetrical warfare, because this is coming out of the irregular warfare doctrine. This isn't conventional warfare. This isn't us and them fighting. This is multi-dimensional. In asymmetric warfare or irregular warfare, the center of gravity is the people, the population. Think of it this way. When Russia initially invaded Crimea, they already had a very strong information and PSYOP campaign taking place in that region. They controlled the information that was being fed to the local people and also to the international community. And then they began to manipulate or influence, if you will, certain demographics within that area, specifically the uncommitted and resistance sympathizers. Resistance meaning the local Russians that they had in that area. But it also influenced the enemy forces, being the Ukrainians, and then the enemy sympathizers. So, think of it this way. If the people are the center of the gravity, the key linchpin in success, how is information controlled when it's being disseminated to us? Are there only certain channels and streams that we have access to? Do we get shut down or censored whenever we try to publicly display information ourselves? Are we controlled? Are we corralled? Are we shut down and censored? And are we corrected by a governing body anytime that we happen to put something out into the world that isn't in alignment with their strategic, operational, and tactical objectives? If the answer is yes to that, then that means there is an information operation that is being actively conducted against the American people. If that information is having some sort of an effect to where it's causing action, people to take action towards a certain idea, going back to the ideological resistance, then that is what's called a PSYOP, psychological operation. So you ask yourself, has information been controlled? Has information been censored? Has information fit a narrative? And if yes, that's an information operation. Has it caused people to take physical action in some form or fashion? If the answer is yes, that's a PSYOP. What side of the aisle are you on? I could care less who you support in terms of political ideology. Well, I take that back. I actually do care, because I want people to be as informed as possible. Now, I'm not going to hate you for liking one side or the other side, but I do want you to make smart decisions that are based off logic and not emotion. Because if you're making decisions and taking action based off the emotion from the information you're fed, then you are subjective to what's called a psychological operation. You need to build your mental and your emotional resiliency. This is why so many special operations dudes like me have certain political and ideological beliefs, because we've been trained on how to manipulate people. And by manipulate, I mean it doesn't work out for the person's benefit in the end. So for example, open borders. What point does that serve? Why are we letting millions of people come into this country? How does that help us? How? Criminals are being purposefully exiled into America from nations like Venezuela. Cuba did it back in the 80s. That's where the movie Scarface comes from. Fidel Castro literally took boats of criminals and exported them to the US, and then the crime went insane. And we're seeing an even way worse example of that taking place right now. What good does that do us? When we look at shutting down oil pipelines that we were creating, what good does that do us to not be energy efficient? What good does that do the ecosystem for all you earth warriors out there? When we have to take shitty oil from countries like Venezuela, again, a communist country that has openly declared that they want the end of us, they want to kill all Americans, they extract this very low-grade oil from the earth, and then they have to send it to Houston in America because no other refineries in the world have the technological advancements due to their capitalistic society and free market structure, which is a debate for another time because, yeah, we don't really live in a true capitalist society due to taxes. But now that pollution is like 10 times worse than anything we could have extracted from our own soil. What good does that do us? And don't get all, well, we have the technology to do everything, naturally or whatever, clean energy. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Could we? Possibly, sure, but why are we even having that stupid conversation right now? We're not even pulling our own clean energy sources that exist to begin with. What good does it do us to shut all that stuff down? What good does it do us to tax the rich, as you like to say? Because the rich don't get taxed. The rich, the true corporate elites, are the ones who benefit the most from these types of taxes, especially the death tax when you pass over your estate to your child. Because a small business owner, yes, who might be making a few $1,000,000, but also might not, might just be making a couple $100,000. That estate tax, when they pass it over, that's not going to survive to live on to their next generation. So what happens is they do a stress sell, and then a large corporation comes in and buys them out for super cheap, pennies on the dollar. And then they have all their offshore accounts and everything already established. They're the ones who have the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., who are pushing for these types of tax increases on the rich. If you think that, then you're just so subjective to this information and PSYOP campaigns, you have no mental or emotional fortitude. Corporations are not the ones who pay the price. It's the small business owner, it's the middle class who always gets stuck with the check. What good does that do the American people? Answer that. That's all I'm asking. If somebody could prove to me that there's a true benefit in this, sure, I'm open to it. I've changed my mind on so many things in my life. Are you? Are you capable of opening up your mind and changing your belief systems? Because the person who has an open mind and sits back and thinks and reflects upon their life experiences and makes an educated decision based off of that and their logic, and not just some hearsay and some emotional evoking statement from a controlled information source, that's the person who has mental and emotional resiliency. That's the person who is independent in thought and free thinking. Not somebody who hears some banter in the girl's bathroom and then goes running down the hallway screaming at everybody. How do we even get to this point where we're saying that men are girls and girls are women and are boys? I have a friend who's a firefighter. He got brought up on an investigation because they got called to a scene and a chick who claimed to be a dude said that they had abdominal pain. So they treated her like she was a dude because that's what she wanted. Brought her to the hospital. She died from an ectopic pregnancy. How does believing this bullshit make life better for anybody? A week later, they go out to the same neighborhood, similar situation, abdominal pain from a chick who claims to be a dude. And she's married to a guy who claims to be a chick. Still has a penis. What the fuck? Well, they ask, did your wife stick her penis in your vagina, sir, and possibly get you pregnant? And the level of offense was so egregious that they filed a complaint. My buddy and his partner got brought up on charges, paramedic firefighters. People who are trying to serve the community, make the world a safer, better place. God forbid you ever need one. Because the good men and women who want to serve in those positions are no longer doing so because of this type of bullshit. They don't even get paid good to begin with. So what does that do? That lowers the standard for paramedic firefighters, for police officers. You think we've had a lot of incidents in the past with cops? What do you think is going to happen when we get a bunch of illiterate dumb fucks running around with a badge and doing medicine? It's not going to get any better. It's going to continue to get a lot worse. My point to all this is, if you don't know the games that are literally designed to be played against the population of a nation, if you don't understand how people are used as leverage in the center of gravity in order to accomplish military tactics, operations, and strategies, then you should probably shut the fuck up about a lot of things and ask somebody who does know about this stuff. Don't listen to some dumb fucking idiot White House representative who just lies through their fucking teeth all day long. I heard Sarah Silverman said Joe Biden's senile, he's a little slow, but he surrounds himself with smart people. Like who? Who? None of the people in his cabinet have any real-world experience. Our lead attorney general is a tranny. You don't even know what sex you are, and you're the surgeon general, lead medical professional for the nation? How many of you saw the nuclear secret tranny that got busted stealing like combs from a fucking dollar store? That person has a top secret compartmentalized information clearance in the nuclear projects of the United States. No wonder we got millions of people flooding through our border. Why is the federal government telling the state of Texas to take down barriers along the border? This stuff makes no sense, ladies and gents. That's why I wanted to read this to you. Straight doctrine. It's unclassified. That's what information and PSYOPs are. Are you a sucker? If you have been, that's fine. Just admit it. And let's get you up to speed. Fucking squared away. I'm not going to hold anything against anybody. I've made many mistakes in my life. But the question is, what are you going to do with it now? What do you choose to do with it? You have the information. You're just going to go back to your YouTube feed and your Facebook scrolling and continue to allow yourself to be manipulated and conditioned by the people who want you to be manipulated and conditioned. If you haven't read George Orwell's 1984, then you need to. When I first read that book, thought that it was impossible to actually truly happen in this life. Feasible to some degree where it scared me a little bit, but I never really thought that it could happen. The Ministry of Truth, fact-checking. We're these fact-checkers. Why are we fact-checking? I believe in absolutism when it comes to freedom of speech. If I'm saying something that offends you, there's probably some truth behind it. Get yourself up to speed, ladies and gents. Make these decisions for yourself objectively, with education, and back it up with experience. Remember, if you're being emotionally evoked by something that you're seeing, well, one, you probably don't even know the real story. I can tell you that for a fact. You're never going to know the real story through the news. That's one thing. The other thing is, why? Why are you so emotionally evoked by it? What is it about that information that is making you feel like you need to go act upon it somehow, some way? Is there an immediate threat to your life? Somebody going to die? How do the things that you hear about, especially with this presidential administration, which drives me insane because I just don't get it at all, coming as a guy who's been trained in information and psychological operations, who's been trained in regular warfare, how do me and all my buddies not see this? We are the people who have been trained to do this. And we're all looking at y'all, telling y'all, this doesn't make any sense. Let me know your thoughts. Put them in the comments. Let's have a conversation about this. If you know somebody who'd be willing to have a recorded interview, send them my way, please. I want to help people develop mental and emotional resiliency, a strong, lethal mindset capable of making their own decisions, not based off a bunch of bullshit information that gets fed to them through an IO and a PSYOP. Like this, share it if you think it's useful. And if not, tell me to go fuck myself. I really don't care. Help the algorithm. I wish the best for this great nation, ladies and gents. Been to 43 countries. The vast majority of the world does not have it as good as we do here in America. No clean running water, no good electricity, no good fuel, pollution everywhere, no good waste management system, no good roads, no good waterways. I mean, we're so fucking spoiled. God forbid we lose it. All right, everyone. Take care. Stay strong and stay lethal, my friends.